I know what it's like to literally work your ass off in the gym for years and years and years and still see no results, because that was the reality that I lived in my earliest years of training, and I wasted those formative years where I would have got the best gains, basically fucking around, doing stupid shit that inevitably, now that I look back on it, was never going to work to help me build muscle. And I think over the last few years, as I have developed and matured as a coach, a person, and someone with now, I would say, a really good understanding of training, I've realised that there are 4 key mistakes that I was making. And this video is going to break down what those mistakes were and why they were keeping me small. The first of which is probably one that will not be too alien to you if you have watched my channel before. But I'm going to put mistake number 1 as training with kettlebells. Now, of course, when you train with any implement that is weighted, when it's kettlebells, whether you're doing CrossFit, whether you're doing high rocks or DECA, whatever it is you might be doing, of course, you can build muscle with those things. Does it mean that that is the best option for you to build muscle? Absolutely not. When we think about why we are training, we have to get a solid understanding of what the most important outcome is to us. And for me, I felt like I was lying to myself now that I look back at it. I felt that being explosive and being able to swing loads of weight and being able to snatch loads and having this kind of great level of short-term cardio endurance was really, really important to me. And now that I'm a bit more mature, I just look back and think, no, it wasn't. Like, the thing that was bothering me was how I looked, not how I felt. And we'll talk about how we cover the base of your fitness and your general level of health a little bit later on in this video as well. But for me, just having that epiphany, realising that, okay, I might have built a tiny bit of muscle with these, but I'm trying to get from point A, which is where I am now, to point B, which is having a significant amount of muscle on my frame. And I want to do it in the most efficient manner possible. I am someone with a lot on my plate. I'm running a couple of businesses, going through a lot of transition right now in my personal life. And literally just fucking about with kettlebells just didn't make sense for me, because I had to put an outsized amount of effort in for the little results that I was actually getting. There is a reason that bodybuilders train a particular way. They are trying to get as big as possible. I'm not saying that's my goal, but ultimately we need to look to them for training advice on what the most efficient way to pack on size is. The analogy I would use is quite simple. Why would we walk 10 miles to go and buy the exact same thing that you can get in the store that's 100 yards away? Like, it doesn't make sense. When I was training with kettlebells, I was literally training every single day, sometimes twice a day, and running myself into the ground with a shitload of volume just to build a tiny little bit of muscle. And over the last few years, since I've dropped my training down to 3 or 4 days where I'm just spending 45 minutes per session, the difference is absolutely huge. I'm going to put a few transformation shots up in this video and just show you exactly what I mean by that. But this is from actually doing less. I was using time that I was already allocating to training, but just being a little bit more efficient and a lot smarter. Now, obviously with the kettlebell training, the high rocks and all that kind of stuff, of course, you are developing your fitness as well. But I don't really like any kind of training medium that has a broad range of outcomes. For me to stay athletic now, I do Muay Thai, I do boxing, and I run, because that covers my bases. I do still want to be fast and snappy. I want to be able to defend myself, and I want to be fit. But I don't see the purpose in using weights for those things, when I would rather just use them to build size, and that size is going to conversely help me in me fighting with me power, and also going to help protect me from injury with me running. So I like to separate my training modalities based on the objectives that I am actually trying to get from them. There is this narrative that people who bodybuild are just going to become mass monsters. They're going to end up getting really, really slow and stiff. But most people aren't actually looking at bodybuilders when they see that. They're looking at powerlifters, and those are people who train to perform really, really well in 3 specific lifts, which require a lot of stiffness. I exclusively bodybuild when it comes to my weight training, and I am still extremely mobile, extremely flexible, and still extremely fast and snappy with punches and kicks. So it's not really something that you need to concern yourself with, particularly because you're not going to be getting yourself to the point of added mass that a Jay Cutler or a Ronnie Coleman has when you are just an everyday guy. The second mistake that I followed was never following a consistent program. This was a big, big issue for me. As someone with ADHD, and now I'm not just obsessed with TikTok and scrolling on my phone like all these Gen Z kids. I genuinely have it medically diagnosed. But I used to use training as like mental stimulation. And it was almost a form of procrastination for me. And that's why I was training at times up to 14 times per week, twice a day, every single day. I would do all these crazy odd kettlebell lifts. I'd go in and I'd just be like, yeah, I just want to get a pump on. And I would piss about in the gym and I would lift, and I would think just because I'd been in the gym by virtue of actually attending that I was somehow obliged to see results. But I was never actually following any specific program. I did manage to get strong. I did manage to make some progress, but it wasn't a great deal, particularly comparative to the progress that I've made over the last year when I have been following a consistent program, or the last 2 years when I've been following a consistent program. So sticking to a program is super, super important. And the reality is that some of your training is going to feel quite monotonous and quite boring. But at the end of the day, if I want to entertain myself, then I will go and do something entertaining. Training for me is more of a duty than it is entertainment. And I still really love it, even when I'm performing the exact same lifts every single week and just adding a rep or adding a little bit of weight to the bar, whatever it might be. It's still an enjoyable pursuit for me. For some people, it might not feel as enjoyable sticking to a program, but you can either piss about, entertain yourself and feel pretty shit about yourself the rest of the time because you haven't got the body that you want, or you can put yourself through a couple of hours of training per week that maybe you don't necessarily love, but ultimately it's going to give you the body that you have dreamt of for years. I know what the right answer is for me. The third mistake I would make is thinking that more was better. I had read online that volume was a key driver for hypertrophy, and so I would train a lot, but I would never take any of my sets that close to failure. I was always probably hovering around about the 5 or 6 reps in reserve range, which ultimately is just not going to build you any size whatsoever. I had always read on bodybuilding.com forums that all you would need to do is the compound lifts, because by virtue of doing those, if you're doing a bent over row, your biceps are going to grow. If you're pressing, your triceps are going to go. That's not the case. The reason that bodybuilders use a lot of accessory movements is because there are a lot of blind spots when it comes to following kind of a powerlifting style of training. For me, when I was lifting kettlebells, I was just sticking to like squats, overhead presses and rows. And yes, I did build some muscle, but I found that the smaller muscles were really, really lagging. I didn't really have any rear delts. I had no biceps and I had no triceps. And this was a big problem for someone who was looking to fill out a t-shirt. The other problem was the training modality I was following. It was quite difficult to train your chest effectively, and I just did not want to train with barbells whatsoever because I've been indoctrinated into the kettlebell lifestyle. I think the same can be said for people who follow High Rocks or people who follow CrossFit. They think that it's all of a sudden it's the only thing that you can do because they're so embedded in a community. But for me, moving away from this more is better idea and just really going hard with the time that I actually did have and pushing the majority of my sets close to failure or to failure, that started to make the world a difference. Training felt so much harder, but also so much more rewarding because I knew I was walking out there and I'd pretty much left it all on the floor every single time. And it meant that my sessions were a hell of a lot shorter. I cut my sessions down from like 90 minutes to about 45, because the reality was when I was lifting kettlebells or doing whatever else, or the stupid shit it was I was doing, 100-200 push-ups, that was quite fatiguing for me. When I realised that I could just do 2 working sets of say like 6 to 12 reps on a bench press, but really push it hard as opposed to doing 200 push-ups, that was transformative, not only for efficiency, but also for the gains that I made as well. Final piece of the puzzle for me, which you might think is a little bit of a mad one, and probably the biggest mistake I made was not hiring a coach. Because I'm a coach myself and I've gotten really good results for clients, I thought that would apply to my own training. And I was a little bit of a know-it-all in my early 20s. No one could really teach me anything at all. I just thought I knew everything about lifting weights and that was it. And what I knew was gospel. And that's just the beauty of being young and fucking stupid. But handing my training off to someone who can actually view me from the outside helped me identify loads of areas where I was weak that I actually thought I was quite strong in. And even to this day, my intensity is constantly being challenged by my coach. I feel personally when I look at my lifts, I'm like, I could not have got any more out there. The feeling in the set, I'm like, I couldn't have pushed any more. And I'll send form videos over to my coach and he's like, why have you stopped 2 or 3 reps before you got to failure? And I'm like, fuck. But it's just having someone like that in your corner who can see everything that's going on, who can see the way that you're eating, who isn't viewing everything through the lens of excuses that you are making for yourself, and having that level of accountability to someone else is a game changer. And there's a big saying in the coaching community, it's that the coach who trains himself has a fool for a client. And I couldn't agree more. And that's the biggest mistake I ever made is thinking that I didn't need a coach. Now, my question to you would be, if I'm a coach, I've achieved literally hundreds and hundreds of transformations for people, and yet I still recognise that I need a coach myself. What makes you think that you wouldn't benefit from one? Pretty much every single person I've ever trained has come out to the other side and being like, I didn't realise I had trained that hard. I didn't realise that I was fucking up in this area. I didn't realise that I wasn't getting enough sleep. I didn't realise that I was not considering my nutrient timing or anything like that. People, because everyone trains, everyone thinks they are an expert in training. It's kind of like eating. Right? You might hear someone speak to you about a particular diet that they're following because it's worked for them. They are all of a sudden an expert in what diet works for every single person on the planet. And the same can be said for training. Just because you've got some beginner gains in your first year doesn't mean you know what you're doing. It just means that you started lifting weights. That's it. Everybody gets beginner gains, but it will come to a point where you plateau and you need that outside eye to look and see what's going on and to really help drive you forward as well. Once I become self-aware, I realised how much all of these things were holding me back, and the progression, honestly, the last 18 months to 2 years has been insane.